When you hear the word virus, you probably think of getting sick, right? Nasty little germs. But what if I told you they're actually one of the greatest puzzles in all of biology? Seriously. So let's forget what we think we know and crack this code together.
And we're going to start with the biggest mystery of all, a question that literally puts viruses right on the edge of what it means to be alive.
So, here it is, the big question. Are viruses actually alive? You'd think that would be a simple yes or no. But honestly, this has been a massive debate among scientists for decades. And that's because viruses kind of live a double life, somewhere in this weird gray zone between a living thing and just a chemical.
And this is where it gets really confusing. See, on the one hand, they do things that living things do. They reproduce a lot, and they evolve. They adapt. But then you look at the other side of the coin. They aren't made of cells, which is, the fundamental building block of all life. And here's the kicker. They can't reproduce on their own. At all. They're total parasites. They absolutely need a host to do all the heavy lifting for them.
So, for our purposes, let's just boil it down to the simplest scientific definition. A virus is basically just genetic information, a set of blueprints, that's all wrapped up in a protective protein coat. It's pure information with a single focused mission.
And that mission? Invasion. To really understand how they pull it off, we need to take a look at their structure. It's like a masterclass in minimalist, incredibly efficient design.
Okay, so let's break down this tiny machine. At the very heart of it, you've got the nucleic acid. That's the genetic blueprint, the instructions for making more viruses. That's protected by something called the capsid, which is basically a tough protein shell. Think of it like armor. Now, some viruses have an extra layer of stealth, an envelope that they actually steal from the host cell they infect. And then you've got the spikes. These are the keys the virus uses to unlock and get inside a very specific type of cell.
Now, one of the weirdest things about their blueprints is what they're made of. See, almost all other life uses DNA, which is really stable. But viruses? They can use either DNA or its more fragile cousin, RNA. You've got DNA viruses like smallpox and herpes, but then you have RNA viruses like the flu, polio, and HIV. And because RNA is less stable, they can mutate like crazy, constantly changing their genetic code.
And you have to remember, this entire super efficient little package, it exists for just one reason, to get inside a living cell, hijack all of its machinery, and turn that cell into a mindless factory that does nothing but churn out more and more viruses.
This brings us to their main attack strategy, called the lytic cycle. It's basically a 5-step blitz. First, attachment, the virus locks onto the cell. 2, penetration, it injects its blueprints. 3, biosynthesis, this is the takeover. The host cell is forced to stop everything it's doing and start cranking out viral parts. 4, maturation, all those new parts are assembled into brand new viruses. And then the grand finale, 5, release. The cell bursts open, completely destroyed, unleashing a whole new army of viruses to do it all over again.
But not all viruses are that aggressive. Some of them, they play the long game. They use a much stealthier approach called the lysogenic cycle. Here, they sneak their DNA right into the host's own DNA, and it could just hide there, sometimes for years, getting copied every time the cell divides, just waiting for the right signal to activate and take over.
So with all this constant invading going on, it's no surprise that it kicked off one of the most ancient wars on Earth, this endless evolutionary arms race between viruses and, well, us, their hosts. So how do you fight back? Well, your body has these amazing little defenders called antibodies. Think of them like a highly specialized security team. They learn to recognize the exact shape of a virus, tag it for destruction, and stop it from ever getting into your cells.
But of course, the virus has a brilliant counterattack. Viruses like influenza are absolute masters of disguise. They are constantly mutating, always changing the shape of their surface proteins, which are the exact things our antibodies are trained to look for.
And yep, that right there, that is exactly why you can get the flu again and again. By the time your body's built up an army of antibodies to fight one version, the virus has already changed its disguise, making it practically invisible to your immune system all over again.
So you've got this complete chaos of constant mutation and an almost infinite variety of viruses. How on earth do scientists bring any order to that? Well, they learn to crack the code.
For the longest time, the way we sorted viruses was, well, kind of basic. It was all about the symptoms. If it made you cough, we called it a respiratory virus. It wasn't very scientific.
The game really changed in 1966 when the International Committee on Taxonomy of Viruses was formed. They set out to create a real, scientific system for the whole world to use.
So what does this new system actually look at? Well, it pretty much boils down to 3 key things. First, its morphology. That's just its shape. Is it a long rod, a mini-sided ball, something else entirely? Second, its nucleic acid type. Is it using that DNA or RNA blueprint we talked about? And third, its strategy for replication. What is its specific game plan for hijacking a cell? And why does this all matter? Because it gives researchers all over the world a powerful universal language. It lets them understand how a new virus might behave, predict how it might spread, and, most importantly, figure out how to fight it.
Okay, so we've seen the virus as a puzzle, an invader, and an enemy. But that brings us to the final part of our story, and this is where it gets really mind-bending. After centuries of being attacked by them, we're finally learning how to turn the tables and hijack the hijackers.
I know it sounds a little bit like science fiction, right? But this is one of the most exciting new frontiers in medicine. What if we could actually reprogram these perfect little invasion machines to work for us instead of against us?
Well, the answer is a huge yes. Scientists are doing some absolutely incredible stuff right now. There's phage therapy, where they use viruses that hunt bacteria to fight off superbugs that our antibiotics can't touch. There's viral therapy, where they program viruses to hunt down and destroy cancer cells while leaving healthy cells alone. And in gene therapy, they're using hollowed-out viruses as tiny delivery trucks to drop off corrected genes right into our cells. It's amazing. We are literally rewriting the viral code.
So where does that leave us? Are they just parasites, these ancient authors of so much disease? Or could they also hold the key to our future cures? They already blur the line between living and non-living, and now they're starting to blur the line between a poison and a medicine. So what are they, really? Maybe they're just the most powerful agents of change this planet has ever known.